He's a liberal and is proud of it. What's the difference between a liberal and a progressive?
I don't know anymore. Actually, of course, the term is used completely differently in Europe from the United States. Yeah. Liberal in Europe is free market. Liberal in the U.S. tends to mean you want more government intervention. So the term is a pretty confused term, actually.
Presidential candidates move to the middle. Does Secretary Clinton have the ability to move to the middle, or has she seen so much from the senator from Vermont that she's going to have to keep some of that liberal heritage to keep her base?
Well, she's absolutely in the middle and is the status quo candidate by her own account and her own positioning. She says, I want to continue the past 8 years. A lot of the electorate, though, overwhelmingly says we're on the wrong direction by a huge margin. Right. And this is the tension.
I mean, it's a tension, but is it solved by just economic growth? Do what you've observed being active with Senator Sanders, does the angst go away with better GDP growth? I don't buy it for a minute. I think it's societal.
There is a lot of angst. Today, there's a story running of a new study showing that suicide rates in the United States have gone up significantly. It's shocking. It shows how corrosive the current situation is for a lot of people in this country. It's really stunning to read this because we've plateaued on rising life expectancy, something that we tend to have thought is automatic, but it's hardly automatic. We're seeing really a corrosive social phenomenon in our country right now.
But Professor Sachs, is this because, you can have GDP growth, that helps as long as it's distributed more fairly. And do you think QE has had a material impact in fostering this inequality?
We know that inequality in the United States has been rising now for 30 years. This has gone on across administrations, Republican presidents, Democratic Party presidents. We took the position in this country already 30 years ago, basically starting with the Reagan administration, that we're not going to use redistributive policies, that basically we're going to be in a low tax, low government spending era. And this has been part of the story of why the Gini coefficient, the measure of inequality in the United States, has soared. That hasn't happened in countries where there's been more active government policy, especially Northern Europe, to say that every poor kid has the same chance as a middle class or richer kid. In our country, we've just basically allowed the inequality to widen for decades, especially for lower skilled workers. Real incomes have been going down now for years and years. There's nothing changing this trend, and I think there's a tremendous amount of unhappiness about it.
Will we see a reversal in that trend, depending, I guess, on who comes to power?
You can only see a reversal if there is a change of politics and policy in this country, basically in a different vision of how fiscal policy works. The countries that keep low inequality, and again, those are mainly Northern Europe, countries like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, Germany, work at it quite hard. They tax more than the United States, and they distribute more than the United States in terms of single-payer health care or free tuition for higher education or child care, vacation support. When we do studies, which I put out with colleagues every year, so-called World Happiness Report, the U.S. comes out rather low among the high-income countries. The countries that do more redistribution, have lower inequality, are less stressed, less tense, and happier. And it's showing up now in life expectancy and other dramatic indicators.
In your book, The Price of Civilization, you have a chapter called The Rigged Game. You were 4 years ahead of what we're seeing right now. Whether it's Mr. Trump or Mr. Sanders, there is a pervasive belief that it's a rigged game. Who de-rigs us? Who is the one, who's the institution that says we need to be less rigged?
Well, the rigging is basically by the incumbents who are together with the lobbyists and the billionaires, and we know that the whole political process has gone wildly awry. The Supreme Court gave it a big kick in the wrong direction with Citizens United and all those other opinions that couldn't tell the difference of free speech and anonymous corporate contributions. Really shocking. The Supreme Court gutted the regulations of how we do election financing in this country. So the game is rigged. Americans are sick of it, that every time you see a candidate, there's a billionaire behind that candidate. Or a billionaire running himself.
Do you have an optimism that President Clinton could right the ship?
Well, she's absolutely a core part of this whole process. That was how the whole Democratic Party moved, starting with Bill Clinton, was to pair up with Wall Street back in 1992. It changed the nature of our politics. The Supreme Court opened up the spigots entirely. People are really disgusted. And someday, a candidate, whether it's Bernie Sanders or someone else, is going to win on the basis of small contributions, not on the basis of the billionaires. Someday.